Hello, everyone. Let's get going. Questions about where we are before we start? No, all right. So yeah, today we finished chapter 3. Might give you a small exercise to do at the end. So you have some work to do, otherwise it's just a too easy class. All right, so let me share my screen. Okay. So we were here, aggregate demand curves. So just to remind you what we were seeing last time. So marginal willingness to pay and total willingness to pay are this concept. It's essentially the demand curve for one person. But of course, we have more than one person in the economy. So the goal is to aggregate the demand of everybody to get the demand from the market, and then be able to see what is the equilibrium on the market. So how do we do that? So it depends what the curve looks like. I'm always going to give you linear demand curves. Doesn't mean that it gets that much easy to aggregate them, but here we go. That's maybe, I would say it's maybe the more challenging thing that you're going to have to do in this class. So here we are. All right, so what's a bit tricky about this is that you have to, so we have to add everybody's demand for every price level. So how do you do that? Well, you aggregate everybody's individual demands. So here I have written this QDI. So it's somebody's demand. Note that this is somebody's inverse demand. So if you want to know what the demand is, you flip the axes. So you have Q here and the price here, but we always represent price here and Q here. So if we're going to add curves together, we don't add them vertically, we add them horizontally because we add quantities together. What we're asking is, for instance, if the market price is, I don't know, 5, how much would all the consumers on the market be willing to buy as a whole? So you add, well, what am I saying? This is quantity. So if the market price was, okay, let's say it's 3. So you say, how much would everybody on the market be willing to pay? So that person would be willing to pay, let's say, about 4. But then you add this other person who would be willing to buy the same amount, for instance. So that's 4 plus 4. And then some other person would be willing to pay 2. And then you add all everybody's demand together on the horizontal axis. But here, so just going back here, the problem is, here, what this means is that past a price of 5 and above, the person demands 0. Okay, of course, you cannot demand a negative amount. You're not going to start selling stuff if the price is too high. You're just going to say, I'm not going to go buy anything. So it means that here we have some sort of kink on the demand curves. If we had some other shapes, like, I don't know, some like 1 over Q or something, that would look different. But here we have linear demands. So we have to make sure that we take into account all these discontinuities in the demand curve. So how does that look like? Yeah, here is a small example, but maybe I should just go right away to the illustration. So just first of all, what are my demands? So I have 2 people, Alice and Bob. Alice likes organic apples. So Alice is willing to, so this is the demand of Alice, QA of P. So how much Alice wants to buy an apple for a certain price, which is 10 minus P. So Alice would like to buy a lot. Bob likes organic apples, but not that much. So Bob is willing to pay for the same price. Bob will be willing to buy fewer apples than Alice. What do we do, first of all, if we want to represent them like we usually do with price here and quantity here? Well, we flip the axes around. So if I invert this, then I get that in the inverse demand of Alice is 10 minus Q. So I'm just going to show you, for instance, inverting the demand. Just so that there's no, so you just say Q, let's just write it this way. You just get rid of this P there. You just treat them as an equation. So it's 10 minus P. So then you subtract P on both sides. So you get P plus QA equals 10. And you subtract Q on both sides. So it's, oh yeah, and you can drop the Q too. And then let's subtract P on both sides. So it's 10 minus Q. And then just to show that it's a function and it's a function of Alice, you say P if equals 10 minus Q. All right. So this is at what price would Alice be willing to buy Q apples? So that would be 10 minus Q. So this is how you get it. And this is how you get the inverse. So you get the inversion of Bob the same way. And now what does that look like? Well, this is Alice's case, 10 minus Q. It's the price that Alice is willing to pay. 10 minus P, sorry, and the price, the quantity, the price that Bob is willing to pay for the apples is, oh, I've written 5, but it's 6. Sorry about that. I'm going to correct that. Yeah, so, and what do you see? You see that between 6 and 10, there's only Alice who's going to buy apples. Bob buys, as we said, he's not going to buy a negative amount, he's going to buy 0. So then when you add the two curves together horizontally, QA plus QB gives you this segment. It's just Alice's demand. And then once we reach below 6, then it's both Alice and Bob who are going to buy them. So you see that, for instance, the sum total at 0, the sum total is 10 plus 6 is 16. But then, yeah, between 10 and 6, so you see that at 6, for instance, so it's only 4 because you just have to look at 6, it's Alice will demand 4. Would be ready to pay, rather at a price of 6, Alice would be willing to buy 4. So the price of 6, 4. All right. So that's, we have to just be mindful of that. So how do you do that? Well, we add quantities together. So we add these two curves together. And so how do you represent this? So you say the following. So between, so here, between a quantity of 0 and 4, only Alice buys. So the inverse demand is the inverse demand of Alice. So between Q is 0 and 4, then it's just the demand of Alice, the inverse demand, which is 10 minus Q. And between 4 and 16, so that's when both of them are going to buy. So that's here, 4 and 16. Then it's the horizontal sum of both of their demand. So how do you find this? Well, first of all, you add up together both of their, so you get, yeah, Q is equal to QA of P plus QB of P, which is 16 minus 2. And then you, oh, yeah, I made a mistake. Sorry, I made a mistake in my slide. So that's just making sure that I'm not mistaken. QA is 10 minus P, so that's 16 minus 2P. Yeah, but now I need to invert this. Yeah. So let's just do this together then. P equals 16 minus Q equals 16 minus 2P. So I have that 2P equals 16 minus Q. So P equals 8 minus Q divided by 2. All right. So that's what I should have there. Does that make sense? So let me go back to show you all the test steps, right? So if I give you demand curves like this, then what you want is then to add them up together to get the total demand, Q equals QA plus QB. And then what you can do is then invert the first one, invert the second one, and invert the total one, which is this one. And then what you know is that for a price that is between 10 and 6, because the first inverse demand starts at 10 and the second starts at 6. So you know that this demand curve will not kick in until later. Then between 10, a price of 10 and a price of 6, it's only Alice who buys. How do you find that in terms of Apple? Well, you just say that you just estimate that you say that the price, which is equal to 6, has to be equal to 10 minus Q. So you get Q equals to 4. Okay, let me do that. So how do you find this 4 there? So you know that Alice only will buy until price below 4, below 6. So then what you can do is 6 equals PA of Q equals 10 minus Q. So then you get that Q equals 10 minus 6 equals 4. So that gives you the range there. And then you can, and then you just, for the total here from 4 to 16, you just check at how much they are going to buy in total if the price is 0. Yeah, so then that's how you express inverse demand, P of Q. So sorry about that. It's okay, so questions about this? So you're going to have an exercise to do to make sure that you can invert these demands. Are you mesmerized? Are you? So it looks simple, but you have to be careful about what you're doing. So because you really get something that's defined in 2 segments. So one segment there, P of Q equals 10 minus Q, and then P of Q equals, oh yeah, so that's good, right? 8 minus Q over 2. Oh yeah, so that's good. It's just here I haven't written it, but yeah, this is what you get. So it's one way to do it. There are many other ways you could find these equations, but I think it's good to I give you one good way to do it that always works, so you can know for sure you understand. Okay, so stop me at some point if you get a question, and otherwise we continue. Okay, shifts in demand curves. So change in price yields movement along a demand curve, but not a shift on the curve. So This, I hope you do remember that. So what demand curves are links between price and quantity. So if you say the price changes, what happens to quantity demanded? So that's a movement on the curve. So let me give you a, let me go back here, for instance. Yeah, let's do that. So if you have if you say something like there's a change in market price, how does that affect quantity demanded? Well, for instance, if market price falls from 4 to 1, and you ask how much is that affecting quantity demanded, well, that's a movement along the curve, of course, or on the curve. But if it's anything else, like if this is Alice, for instance, and Alice decides that she likes like it less than she used to, so that's a change in taste, and that there's no taste on that axis, no taste on that axis. So whenever it's something that's not quantity demanded or price, then it's going to move this curve, right? So here it would move the curve downward, for instance. So what kind of thing can affect demand? So change in tastes and preferences, time. So time, this is I don't remember why I wrote that. So can somebody tell me why I wrote time here? Demand curve might shift, changes in time. Not too sure, actually. Income makes total sense. So yeah, if normal good. More income. Oh yeah, maybe that's what I meant, because it's, yeah, it's, I should totally have explained more.
No, that would be the smart way, I believe.
Yes.
based on for example, the season or whatever. Like for example, now it's orange juice. That's it's kind of like going very expensive because right now in Florida is becoming more cold. So based on the time of the year, stuff
Yeah.
may be more expensive.
So yeah, but so thing is, time of the year changes taste. So yeah, income is pretty obvious. So, but I'll check what I meant by writing time. So ability to pay is an important factor. So that's income, obviously, in determining demand. So it determines marginal willingness to pay and total willingness to pay for a good, of course. And so how does that link to benefits? Well, so far we have just said, okay, what if it's a private good that you buy, such as organic apples or something else? So why is it important for environmental economics? Well, because at some point, it's going to be a very good tool for us to determine how something is desirable in society. It's going to be obviously linked to what people are willing to pay for it. So the total benefits of a market are the total willingness to pay of all everybody on the market. If it's a private market, it's very obvious because because at some point, if I'm ready to pay more for buying a car or buying fruit or buying something else, then it somehow reflects how beneficial or how happy I am buying this thing or that thing. So it's not a perfect measure, but a quite good measure. It's a measure of surplus in a way, because then I'm going to buy it and I would have been willing to pay a bit more than the price that I would pay. So that gives me what we call the surplus as a consumer. Yeah, and those who value the good more are willing to pay more for it, and therefore should receive a greater benefit than those who value it less. what are the shortcomings for this idea in environmental economics? There are many. First of all, so you would have to, so it's not that easy to observe demand curves. So if you have a, say, a demand curve like this, then when I draw it this way. Because what I'm claiming or assuming is that when the price goes up, quantity goes down, and this is true until a very high price or a price of 0. But then empirically, can I observe this? No, it's very difficult. For public goods such as park or as clean air or many things that people enjoy, they just don't pay for it. It's free. So you can never know how much they would be willing to pay for cleaner air. So it's very difficult. For private goods, even, the problem is you never observe something quite far from the market equilibrium. So let me draw a market equilibrium here. So if, say, the supply curve shifts here or there, that gives you some idea of the elasticity of the demand curve around the equilibrium there. But do you ever observe this or that? No. You think about, I don't know, chicken, for instance. You observe the price of chicken at $10, but you never see how much people would be willing to buy on the market if the price were $50, because that's just never happening. Or if the price was $1, because that's never happening. So from an empirical perspective, we try to measure as best as we can the elasticity of demand around the equilibrium. This is just speculation and speculation. I just use this curve there, but I could, if I was honest with you, I would draw this, because that's the only thing I can know for sure is, yeah, around this equilibrium point, I know that this seems to be the case, that there's a negatively sloped demand curve, but who knows what happens there or there? It's never been observed. Yes, so you never observe things that are extreme. Also, you need exogenous variations in quantity supply to measure the changes in market price. So this happens sometimes, but not too often. So, for instance, if you, one good time was in for us, actually, for economists, was, say, when we had the oil shocks, because this was clearly OPEC countries who decided to hike the price of oil. And then you can observe, so how much is going to be consumed in the world when the price of oil increases like this. And you observe that, oh yes, the quantity consumed was lower, but then you can see how much. But in other circumstances, in the real world, you cannot observe exogenous variations like this. You always observe things that change for the demand and the supply. So let me give you an example. So I don't know, if you think about, if you go to a small city on the coast where they have fishermen, and the consumers go and buy their fish there, and then you observe that the price is the quantity consumed or bought on the market is lower, and the price is higher when there is bad weather. So, okay, is that because fishermen want to fish less because there's bad weather? Or is it also because people don't want to go to the market and buy stuff when there's bad weather, for instance? So we can never know if there's a shift of the supply curve or a shift of the demand curve, or probably both. So that's all the difficulty of empirically estimating demand curve. Therefore, estimating, because what we want ultimately is take good decisions for if you want to implement good environmental policies, we want to know how valuable some good is, some public good is, or how valuable cleaner air is, for instance, or less polluted water. So we want to have ways to measure this accurately, and yeah, it's not that easy. So we need many small tricks to yeah. So one possibility is that in some instances you can observe prices, and that gives you some idea of willingness to pay of people. For instance, if you go near airports, well, airports generally create pollution because of air travel and lots of noise. So it's often the case that the price of houses is lower near airports. So if you can observe a gradient of prices, so you observe that the price is low near the airport and then it goes higher and higher as you move away, then that gives you pretty much a good idea that yes, the value of houses near the airport is lower. So that gives you a sense of how much people are willing to pay extra to not be close to the airport, or how much people are willing to accept bad air or bad pollution to get a better deal. Now, is that perfect? So that would be perfect if, or perfect. That would be a very good indication if people were perfectly homogeneous in the world. What do you think is going to happen? I'm just going to so is our person homogeneous? And if that's the case, then what's the problem with trying to observe this thing? The difference in price between near the airport and far from the airport.
Sure. What do you mean by homogeneous exactly?
Homogeneous means they're all the same. They all have the same taste.
Then no, people are not homogeneous at all.
Yeah, so what's the implication for this change in price?
Well, for example, if people, I'll give you an example, like it says a price change of houses around parks, airports, and highways. So for example, people that are at the airport, it could be a businessman that has to fly more often than
okay, that's good.
than in general, right? So he's gonna buy a house closer to the airport because he doesn't feel like driving 2 hours to the airport, right? Compared to maybe, for example, me, I live in the suburbs on the North Shore. I don't need to go to the airport every single day, but it's a choice of my parents that live here, but it takes me 2 hours to get to school every day. So it's more of a choice and being able to see what's better for you in a way.
Yes, so exactly. So that's the problem with this. It doesn't measure how much. So take me, for instance. Yeah, I'm a bit like you. I don't travel a lot. So if you said, oh, you live where you live, how much would you be willing to how much should we lower your rent if we wanted you to live near the airport? I would say, oh, a lot, because I really don't want to be there. I hate the sound of airplanes and stuff. So that's me. But then do you compare me where I live right now and me where if I lived near the airport? As you said, no. So people are going to sort themselves. So it's this change in price is going to be quite attenuated by the fact that who's going to live near the airport? It's people who need to travel a lot, as you said, but also just people who tolerate noise and tolerate bad air, for instance, bad air quality. So that's something that's modeled with the price signal, is that it mixes many different preferences together. It would be so much more easy for economists if everybody were the same. Yeah. Also, of course, demand curves are affected by the ability to pay for something, as well as preferences. And that is something that makes it tricky also. So if you think about, so healthcare, for instance, so should people pay for their healthcare or not? Well, if people were all the same with all the same income, then you would say, oh, well, since everybody can choose whatever they want to buy and they don't, so if somebody really likes being in health, then he's going to buy more of healthcare. And if somebody doesn't care about their health, then they can just buy less. But what we have is we have a very unequal society where some people have lots of money and some people have very little money. And we think it's somehow obscene that some person with a lot of money is going to have the best healthcare in the world and the poor people is going to have nothing. So it's not in all actuality, the amount of things that people are going to buy is going to somehow reflect their taste, which would be fine, but a lot also reflect their ability to pay, so their income, which we see is more problematic. Yeah, so we should be mindful of this. Of course, individuals' demand is affected by how much they know about things. So they cannot really say how much they would be willing to pay for something if they have never experienced it before. And the thing is, so if you've always lived near a dirty river, so you don't really know how good life would be if the river was clean, for instance. So you have to have some leap of faith. Oh yeah, I think it's good to it would be good to live there or not. But yeah, so information is important. So we have to somehow model how people would be willing to, yeah, would be happier if something existed or not. An alternative way, so this is determining value thanks to the demand, so thanks to the market signal. An alternative way that economists can use and policymakers can use is asking people directly. What we can typically do is ask for two different things. So first question we could say is, for instance, oh, you live near a lake, but it's dirty. How much would you be willing to pay to clean the lake? Or if the lake is clean, but then a factory wants to move near the lake and dump waste in the lake, then similarly, you may ask residents around the lake, your lake is clean. Would you be willing to be paid so that the lake gets polluted? Yeah, in a perfect world, our intuition is that, well, the difference between a clean lake and a polluted lake is the same whether the lake is already polluted and you're asking, should we clean it? Or the lake is not polluted and should we start polluting it? But in all actuality, how do you think people respond to this? So first question is, your lake is dirty. How much are you willing to clean it, to pay for it? And the second is, your lake is clean. How much do we have to pay to get it polluted? What's your intuition about this? Do you think they're going to respond differently for the exact same level of pollution? Many things may be going on there. Many considerations. No idea? Oh, I'm disappointed. Don't have an intuition. Last class, I had a psychologist in the class, and he was, he had a lot to say about this. So typically what's going to happen is, yeah, let me give you some intuition. So there's I don't know if you've heard about this psychologist, Kahneman. Yeah, I think he won a Nobel Prize in economics. Yeah, so he did awesome work on this people's attitude toward choice. And so one of the experiments he conducted was the following. So here the experiment is. So he said to people, yeah, please come and have some experiment for me. But yeah, it didn't mean anything. But then at the end, he said, to group number one, he said, oh, thank you for participating in the experiment. Thank you for your effort. We're getting you a mug, so a mug to drink coffee. But if you don't like it, you can sell it back to us for, like, I don't know. I think they would fix their price. Yeah, so they would fix their price. And usually the price that people would be willing to pay was to get paid to give back the mug would be I don't know, $10 or something like this. And then the second group, they would say, oh, thank you for participating in the experiment. If you want, you can buy a mug. How much would you be willing to pay to get this mug as a souvenir of the experiment? And then how much did people say they were willing to pay for this mug? It was like $1 or $2. So, and the same thing would happen here. So generally, when you ask people, how much are you willing to pay to clean the lake? People say, yeah, I don't know really. I don't really care about this lake anyway. So maybe $10 at most. But then if you ask them, oh, your lake is clean, how much do you have to pay you so that you accept for the lake to be polluted? Then they say, no, this lake is the best thing in the world, and you have to pay me $1,000 if I accept to get pollution dumped in the lake. Yeah, so this is like $10, and this is like $1,000. And this is called the endowment effect. So when you have something, then it's just it's getting rid of it, accepting to not have it anymore is very painful. But when you don't have it, you're like, yeah, my life is perfectly fine without it anyways. And you're not ready to pay a lot to get it. And for economists, that's very problematic because we have to assume that the way we present things or we ask questions shouldn't influence the number we get. It should be the same if it's the same level of pollution, and yet people act differently. So that's one thing. Other problem is strategic answer. Yeah, answering strategically. So what do you think is going on there? People might answer that they want to be paid higher than what they think they should be paid. Yeah, that's exactly this kind of thing. Yeah. So what they do is they answer strategically in the sense that they think, oh, why are you asking me this question? Are you is it because next year you're going to actually ask me to pay what I just said I would be willing to pay? In that case, I'm going to say that I'm willing to pay $5 at most because I don't want to pay. So yeah, so that's exactly a problem. So if people anticipate that their answer will affect how much they will have to pay in the future, they lowball their answers. So they so they say that they value something less than they actually value it. So there's a Swedish economist called Lindahl, who invented a mechanism called Lindahl, that we call Lindahl pricing, it's a sort of perfect mechanism to automatically decide how much to supply some public good, for instance, based on answers. But his mechanisms were based on the fact that people answer truthfully to surveys. And of course, that wouldn't work if people are strategic. But so he's Swedish. And so I've lived in Sweden for a while, and yes, Swedes are actually quite decent and truthful people. So I don't know in Canada how that would work. Maybe. So if we just say, yeah, how about we clean more the streets more? How much would you be willing to have cleaner streets? I don't know how, if people would be truthful in what they say. Yeah. So these are all the problems that we get. So this is the problem of valuation, but still we have to somehow use this to make good decisions in terms of cost and benefit, as we're going to see. So what do economists do? They do everything. They sort of infer from market behavior. Sometimes they ask people, some other times we do anything we can, because we know that whatever approach we take, it's imperfect, but it's better to have some information than no information whatsoever. All right, so cost. So cost is it's quite easy. It's the reverse of the demand side. So production process requires inputs. So and these are the costs for production. So labor, workers, machine, energy, raw material, waste handling, equipment, etc. So firms hire worker, rent building, buy raw materials. So these are all the costs that you have to add together to produce. And inputs are a function of the production level. So more production you want, more input you want. So that's quite obvious. Notion of opportunity cost. So I'm sure you've heard this phrase 1,000 times before, so I'm not going to repeat it too much, but yeah, the opportunity cost of producing something is not just how much you bought, how much you had to buy, but how much you had to buy and sacrifice sacrifice such that you cannot do something else with the money you have, the time you have. So it's the value of the next best thing that you could have done, but you have to sacrifice because you chose to do whatever you chose to do. Yeah, so it's the maximum value of other outputs we could have produced had we not use the resources to produce the items in question. So opportunity cost is what we care about when we care about a project. So we look, so what does that mean? Well, it means that if you say, oh, are we going to build some waste treatment plant, for instance? So it's how you add up all the costs to produce this waste treatment plant, but also all the other alternative things, all the other things that you have to sacrifice, such as the land, such as, yeah, so all the other things. Yeah, so that's all the other thing except out-of-pocket costs. Some inputs are actually used in production, may not be registered as cash costs. So sometimes we can think about the time of of people. That's not wage. So if it's my own business, for instance, then I have to account for the time I put in the business. So yeah, all this information is summarized in cost curves. So the cost, so just as the for a willingness to pay, we can differentiate between marginal cost and total cost. So willingness to pay is a marginal willingness to pay and total willingness to pay. Here we have marginal cost and total cost of production. Marginal cost measures the amount by which total cost increases as output is increased by 1 unit. Total cost is the cost of producing the total amount of output. So if you produce 10, that's how much these 10 units have cost you to produce, and the marginal cost is how much this last unit or how much the next unit will cost you to produce. So this is the same idea as before. Price per apple, cost per apple. So why would the cost per apple increase? So yeah, an idea I can give briefly is if the last apples are higher up in the tree, then you need more to get them. So marginal cost is higher. Makes sense. So that's why we usually have increasing marginal cost curve, because we simply imagine that we start by producing what's easiest to produce. It makes sense. We want to pay as little as we can. So it means that initially the production for the first unit is going to be not too expensive, and then the more and more and more I produce, then the higher the cost per unit is going to be. I think this is not too complicated. Yeah, so this, of course, this is assuming that I have discrete choices of quantities, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in real life, or rather not in real life, in non-real life, in economics life, in the theoretical land, then we assume that we can have fractional quantities all the time. So it makes our life easier, as I said. So this is what we say. So we have a smooth marginal cost curve. So it determines the total value of production. Oh yeah, so this is one small aspect of it. It's in the book they say that the total cost is just the integral of the marginal costs. To be exactly precise, so it's not just the integral of the marginal cost. What would be the integral of the marginal costs? Somebody knows? or the sum of the marginal cost. I almost said it. Everything, yeah, not exactly. Just to say again, so what is the sum of the marginal cost up to some quantity? So the answer is, it's the total variable cost. And then to get total cost, it's total variable cost plus fixed cost. All right. But so this is, if you think about a firm, that's what's going to happen. And if you think about a project that needs a fixed cost, and then you have to also figure out what's the size of the project, then yes, you have a fixed cost. But in our model, we're going to have that's going to be called marginal abatement cost and marginal damage, MACMD. We're going to see this, I think it's next lecture. Then we can say that we don't really have a fixed cost, but this is just to make sure you don't get confused about this. Yeah. So the sum of so in the book it says it's total cost, but it's you had to add the fixed cost. So the total variable cost is the area under the marginal cost curve. So here I write it as an integral, but again, you don't have to be scared of this, because all I'm going to do give you is linear functions. So as long as you remember your triangle and trapezoid the formulas, you're good to go. But if you had a general curve that was curved, then you would need to use an integral, I would say. Yeah, so okay. All right, so with linear functions, it's so again, you have the total variable cost is marginal cost at 0 plus marginal cost at q divided by 2 times q. So it's this trapezoid there. So the total cost is, or total variable cost is this. So here it's 4 plus 10, so that's 14, times 6 divided by 2, so you get an area of 42. So you don't need integrals to compute it. Yeah, so marginal cost, yeah. So if the marginal cost is 4 plus q, so it's 4 plus 0 plus 4 plus 6 divided by 2 times 6, it's 42. Supply curves. So marginal cost, they are a key factor in determining the supplier behavior of firms. Why? Because they are exactly the supply curve. So the supply curve is the marginal cost curve. Why? Because firms are going to accept to produce a certain quantity as long as at least, yes, I will post all the slides, so you don't have to worry about this. Yeah, simply because a firm, if the price is 10, then a firm will demand so yeah, if the marginal cost to produce an extra unit is 10, then the price on the market has to be at the minimum 10. So that gives you a perfect relation between the marginal cost and the supply of the curve. So why? Because the firm sells such that the marginal cost at certain quantity equals the marginal revenue at that quantity. So in competitive markets, the marginal revenue is simply the price. It's if the market price is $10, so 10 is my marginal revenue, and it's the price, and it's going to be the marginal cost, and the supply is the inverse of the marginal cost. So if the marginal cost is this, so it's a relation between price and quantity. So if you want the supply, you just put quantity there and price here, but we don't really care about that. We care about inverse supply and inverse demand. Same thing with aggregate supply curve. I'm going fast because it's really just the flip side of what we've seen in the first part. So the aggregate supply curve is the sum of the horizontal of sum of all the supply curves of all firms. So if I can write this QS of P, which is the sum of the quantity that every firm is willing to supply at some price. So here I give you an example. So if the marginal cost is MC1 of Q equals 4 plus 2Q. So this is the inverse supply if you want. And then to get the supply, it's I just inverse this relationship. So I get that Q is going to be equal to P divided by 2, because I have 2Q here, minus 4 divided by 2. Is that so? Oh, yes. Yeah, okay, that's right. Sorry. I just had a hesitation there. Same thing for firm 2. So the marginal cost curve is this, for instance, 4 plus Q. And the supply curve is the inverse of this, this function there. So you get 4 P minus 4. And here I've made our lives easier because the marginal cost starts at 4. So when you aggregate both of them, then they both start at 4. But if say the marginal cost of that firm was this curve there, and the marginal cost of that firm here was a curve like this, then same problem as before would happen. You would get an aggregate marginal cost curve that would look like this, and then like this. So you have the same aggregation problem. So you have to be mindful of this. All right, so when you aggregate both of them, 4 plus 2Q and 4 plus Q, then the both together gives you 2/3 P plus 4. And to be exactly right, you would also say that if the price is between 4 and 0, then the supply is 0. But here it's just a marginal cost curve, so that's fine. All right. Question about this, or is it going too fast? So I'm going to give you exercises, so then you can verify that you understand well what's going on. Right, so example of aggregate supply. So what you do is so this is just doing this. So what you do is you invert both curves. So and then you get QS1 of P, QS2 of P, then you can add these together. So this you will get, this is P times 2 over 2 plus P times 1 over 2. So that's P times 3 over 2 minus 6. Yeah, P times 3 over 2 times minus 6 for the total supply. And then you invert back. And that's how you get marginal cost of Q equals 2/3 of P plus 4. Right, so I can just show it to you briefly. So you get Q equals 3 times P minus 6. So let's put the plus 6 here. And then I multiply by 2 on either side and divide by 3. Then 2 divided by 3 times 6. And of course, then 6 divided by 3, that's 2. So times 2, so this is 4. So that's how I get. And then this, what is that? It's, of course, I'm just going to rewrite it this way. So this is the marginal cost. This is how you invert it back. All right. And shifts in the supply curve. So this is the same idea, except that shifts occur for different reasons that all have to do with production costs. So the cost of resources used in to produce a good. So it can be change in technology. So if the technology improves, then there's a shift right or a shift down. Yeah, because it costs less to produce something. So the marginal cost per unit is lower. Yeah, so technology can be the productive capabilities of the methods and the machine being employed, the output a firm can get from a set of inputs, which depend on human capitals, which are inherent to these inputs. Yeah. So I'm a bit repeating myself here. That's a bit redundant. So yeah, technology allows firms to produce more at a lower marginal cost, so it reduces the total cost. So it requires investing in research and development. So here it's just a static, I'm just making a static argument about the shift in the curve, but of course, technological improvement is investment that pans out over time. So you would get a shift over time. So this is, for instance, technological progress. So it would shift down the marginal cost curve. All right, so this is the exercise that you're going to have to do. Oh, we still have time. All right, maybe I rushed a bit. But so anyway, so maybe you can, I don't know if we should start the next chapter, or you should, why don't you spend some time to do some of them? No, this is just for you. Yeah, when we get closer to the midterm, I'm going to give you more exercises. This is to practice the notions that we see in class. So try doing this. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to start the next chapter now, since I have just 10 minutes. Yeah, so these are the demand curves. QA of P equals 8 minus P over 2. QB of P equals 4 minus P. And there's a marginal cost, which is 2Q. So this is for the whole industry. So first, find the inverse demands of Alice and Bob. So pick a piece of paper or pick your computer and find it. Once you know it, then maybe write it in the chat. Then find the total willingness to pay for Alice for 4 oranges. then find the aggregate demand. This is more work. Yes, so I have a request for going to slide 18. So note this, right? So just quickly, I'm going to slide 18. So 1, 2, 3, go. Is that what you wanted to see? So, by the way, don't worry, right? All of this will be posted on the website. So somebody found the inverse demands for Alice and Bob? So as soon as you have it, please write it in the chat so I know that. Yes, so Kusam Ganem got it perfect. All right, so let's do that. So do I have space there? Right. So let's start with number 1. Inverse demands Alice. So we have Q equals 8 minus P over 2. So just flip these around and then multiply by 2 on both sides. So that's 16 minus 2Q. Does that make sense? Yeah, please stop me if you have any question. Now let's do Bob. So Bob was 4 minus P. So yeah, the way I would express it is, by the way, PA Q. Then have Q plus 4. is P. So have P equals 4 minus Q. So that would be P equals 4 minus of Q. Equals 4 minus Q. Okay. Then number 2, did somebody find this? The willingness to pay for Alice for oranges. So I'll put my answer back. So you have to use, I advise you to use this. Oh, and by the way, I'm asking for the total willingness to pay, right? Total willingness to pay for all the apples. And you assume that it's a continuous, so you could buy fractional apples too. Yeah, 6, the market equilibrium, we haven't seen it. We're going to see it next time, but I'm pretty sure you remember how you find it. So I'll still leave it there. Yes, so 6, okay, I don't know. Let's try it. So the total willingness to pay, so if you remember your formula, it would be PA of 0 plus PA of 4 times 4 divided by 2. So that would give 16 plus 16 minus 2, 2 times 4. Oops. So that's so that's 16 plus 8. So that's yeah. So how much is that? 24 times 2. So that's 48. Is that 48? I think it's 48. No? Yes. You can compute it quickly, and yeah, that's 48. Google tells me it's 48. So I'm just going to graph this so you see what's happening, and then I'm going to let you do the others. Of course, the others are more difficult, so I advise you to come to spend some time trying to do them. And I'm going to give the answers next class. So be sure you understand how to do them. So let's just look at Alice inverse demand. So this is, it starts at 16. Yeah, and the other way to do that is to ask yourself what is p equals 0, so you get 8. So let's just say this is 8. Right. So Alice's demand looks like this, or inverse demand rather. Then 4 is halfway. And the inverse demand is the total willingness to pay is this thing there, right? And this is so 16 plus 8 times 4 divided by 2. So that's 48. Okay, so make sure you can try. So if you want to practice more, so that's just this 16 minus 2 times q. So q is 4 here, so that's 16 minus 2 times q. So it's when we get here. I'll try and do that on your own. Okay, I think we're out of time, right? Yeah. All right, so last questions before we go. So please, I'm going to pause this. Please do the problems. And I'm going to correct them next time. So if you keep up with the exercises, you're going to have an easy time at the exam. Otherwise, it might be more tricky. Okay, so thank you, and I see you next week. We're still on Zoom next week, right? Just checking. Yeah. Oh no, but we're on Zoom all of next week. No, all of when it starts on Thursday. On Thursday we're back in school, so it will be Wednesday. So Wednesday is the last day of Zoom. Okay, so have a nice weekend, everybody.